My presentation has now been viewed over 3.2 million times. In short, I've been warning Joe Biden will drop out or be forced out of the presidential race.
Hi, Charles Sizemore here, Chief Investment Strategist of the Freeport Society. And today we are bringing you a special video edition of the Freeport Navigator. And as part of that, I'm bringing you a very special guest today, Mr. Louis Navellier. Louis, welcome.
It's great to be here.
For anybody that doesn't know Louis Navellier, first off, I don't know where you've been for the last 40 years. Louis is one of Wall Street's great minds, one of the pioneers of quantitative investing. And your track record, if I have the number right, you've beaten the S&P 500 by a factor of 3 to 1 over the last, 17 years? Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's how Holbert rated us with a growth investor. It used to be called Blue Chip Growth back then. And then Holbert stopped rating letters. So,
but well, the key to any race is quit while you're ahead, right? So,
Yeah, well, this is our best year in 25 years relative to the market. So we're doing fine. We're keeping the performance up.
Good deal. Good to hear. Good to hear. So you and I actually recorded a video back in November where I'm claiming credit for what you said. You made a rather bold claim that everyone thought was nuts when you made it. Then all of a sudden, it seemed a lot more realistic about a month ago. You made the claim that Joe Biden would be replaced as the Democrats' candidate and that we would have a shadow candidate take his place and that it would throw the election into all kinds of chaos. Now, and then the likely outcome would be that this shadow candidate would win and lead us on a path of Californication. That seemed extraordinarily likely up until this past weekend, when, of course, the attempted assassination of presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump sort of changed the calculus there. So you tell me what you think, but I'm reading this as with this kind of surge of sympathy and whatnot. I mean, a lot of people are really kind of seeing Donald Trump as human for the first time after he had this brush with death. All of a sudden, He seems more like a person, right? So I guess first question would be, what do you handicap the election odds at right now? How do you see this playing out?
Well, the election was over when he got shot. I mean, that photo was iconic, with his fist and the American flag in the background, him shouting "fight." That's the same thing as George Bush with the bullhorn 9/11 rebel. It's an iconic thing. It was spontaneous, and he had the Teamsters president speak at the Republican convention. Said nice things about him and his VP, J.D. Vance. And they have a growing coalition. You're going to have low turnout on the Democratic side because they're demoralized. I think the issue with Biden is his family. When your race is over, you can often take the campaign funds and set up foundations. And of course, those foundations can take care of your family. And I actually know that from one of my friends is Biden's neighbor in Wilmington. And when Beau was dying, his son, he ran for governor, even though he was going to be dead soon because of the cancer. And he got a few $1 million, and he took that money to set up a foundation to take care of the family. So the reason Biden wants to stay in is money. Now, there are these very big, powerful political families in America, like the Pritzker family. Jay Pritzker is the governor of Illinois. Penny Pritzker was the Commerce Secretary. The Pritzkers picked Gavin Newsom a long time ago, and they have other Gavins around the country. Essentially, Gavin's just a young Joe Biden you can grab and put him in place, and he'll do whatever you want. So that would still be the plan, but somebody's going to have to give Joe some money for him to quit. And whether it's $100 or $200 million, I have no idea. Obviously, you can see everybody's trying to cut off his money now. James Carville, one of the Walmart heirs. There's just an outcry to stop giving the guy money. Even Clooney, he raised he raised a bunch of money for him, and all Clooney's friends had to give $1 million, and 3 weeks later, Clooney turns on him. So now George Clooney probably needs some friends. That was an expensive meal. They had. But so that could still happen. Now, of course, what's happened is right after the shooting, Elon Musk endorsed Trump, and then set up a PAC with at least $45 million donation in it to support Trump. And then because J.D. Vance worked for Peter Thiel and some other Silicon Valley juggernauts, between Musk and J.D. Vance, the Silicon Valley is now turning. So it's getting to be very interesting. And it's going to be probably low turnout on the Democratic side, high turnout on the Republican side. And so that means there's going to be a lot of key Senate and congressional races that might go red. The one that baffles me right now is Garvey running for Senate in California against Peter Schiff. And Peter Schiff's starting to get very alarmed. Now, Peter Schiff is the biggest mama's boy crybaby out there, and I don't know why anyone would ever vote for him because he's just so annoying. And of course, Garvey was.
I asked that question about most of the people in Washington, and the only conclusion I reach is they vote for them because there was just nobody else that wanted the job.
Yeah, and then of course, there is a deep state out there that employs a lot of people, and the Biden's about to pass stuff to neuter the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court had a decision on Chevron the other day that really does throw a wrench in the work of all the laws, because the laws they pass are vague, and they leave them up to the regulatory agencies to interpret. And the Supreme Court says, no, you don't do it that way. You know what I mean?
No, it was even worse than that. It was the regulatory agency kind of had the discretion to interpret it, and they were given kind of de facto, like their word is the law, right? And so if you're on the other end of that, if you're running a business and they say you're not following the rules, you didn't have a lot of recourse to the courts because the courts would just defer to the agency. So that the Chevron, the turnover of that is really interesting. That actually creates a whole, like that court decision actually changes the government more than any election can or would or could ever do.
And that's part of the divide we have in the country. My wife went to Berkeley Law School. I get all their emails and things, about 3 a week. And they brag how they can go get a court decision, use that to make law, and go out and fine people for 20 or 30 years. And they admit that it might get overturned when it gets to the federal courts. But we have a divide. When Trump got in, the former attorney general under Obama went to California, paid him $25,000 a month just to file opposition lawsuits against everything that they did.
That's good work if you can get it.
Yeah, so it's I don't know how many lawsuits he filed, but he was basically objecting to everything. So there is a deep divide in the country, but Trump's obviously trying to make it less of a divide. A lot of this is competence, and do we want to pay for the endless wars? And the wars are getting to be very, very tough, because when we're having issues right now in the Gulf because they hit another oil tank. The Houthis hit another oil tanker, and one of our destroyers, USS Mason, fought back some anti-ship missiles, which they hadn't seen before. So somebody's giving very expensive missiles to the Houthis. You know what I mean? But when we shoot down a missile or a sea drone, those are often a lot cheaper than our countermeasures.
Sure.
And the Ukraine war, proved that you could swarm an M1 tank with drones and screw it up. And I'm not sure why we have M1 tanks in that fight, because they need an army behind them. It's a turbine tank.
You bring up a really interesting point, because non-state actors, or even just kind of rogue states, whatever you want to call them, they can build an effective force on the cheap with drones. They're never going to
Correct.
outspend us on a Navy or something. That's impossible. Like, there's
Yeah.
not enough money in the world to outspend us on that. But they don't necessarily
So
need to if you can buy a drone army on the cheap.
correct. The Oculus guy who built Oculus is now in the defense business, and he's trying to put up all these systems. You have a drone controlling the other drones, and it'll be interesting if the U.S. Defense Department starts to go that way. But yeah,
Well, they will, of course, do whatever their campaign donors tell them to do.
Yeah. I've been to Virginia. I have some friends that are part of that, part of the deep state, and I'll give you a little insight. So my guy was ex-Reagan guy. My wife was assistant deputy secretary of state. Very, very political. Doesn't like Trump, but wanted Tom Cotton in as the VP. And I says, well, how long are you going to give Trump if Cotton becomes a VP? He says, we'll let him be president for 18 months. So there's a theory that, the deep state can still try to take you out. And, Nixon had this huge victory, 49 states. And then he was gone in 18 months because Bob Woodward was a naval intelligence analyst. And now whether Nixon was entrapped or not is another matter. But yeah, we saw Trump fight that deep state before, and it's going to be very interesting. And J.D. Vance is very skeptical of a lot of things in Washington. So, they've got to decide who they're going to work with.
It's going to be interesting. As one of our themes in the Freeport Society is, of course, it's an age of chaos. And we knew it was chaotic. We didn't imagine assassinations were going to be, or attempted assassinations were going to be part of the chaos. But, that's where we are today. And
well, we didn't imagine that the Secret Service would deny Trump's request for added security because of the Iranian threat. Okay.
Can you imagine that, by the way? Talk about getting pulled into wars we don't really want to be in. If the Iranians had succeeded there, we would have been pulled into a war over there that we had, really no.
Yeah,
it would have been a completely unwanted war that we would have just kind of gotten pulled into. So,
yeah, there's a lot of tit for tat that goes on in the Middle East. So I know they have a new president. He's supposed to be a moderate, but I don't know what a moderate in Iran is. So
a slightly shorter beard.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But I do know they have a demographic issue, and they have a lot of young people. And, the ruling factions of Iran usually don't have a majority, so they want to keep everybody fighting so they can stay in power. Kind of like Macron in France. You know what I mean? Macron's party didn't do that good in election, but he called an election because he's sitting in the middle of it all. So he can still be president.
What's funny about that is he tried to stave off a win by the far right and ended up causing a win by the far left. And he's kind of a moderate in the middle, and he was kind of screwed either way. No matter how that went, it wasn't going to go well for him. Right. But anyway,
that's right.
We're unfortunately not going to fix the world. I, for one, would rather have anybody other than the two candidates in the White House, but this is what we have. And it looks like Trump's going to be the winner, for whatever that's worth. My question to you, how do we make money on this? How are you are a quantitative investment master. You are known to pivot when the data tells you to pivot. How are you positioning your portfolios? What do you like in this environment?
Well, when the CPI came out, it was negative. And then we had a favorable PPI report. Wholesale goods prices were negative. They've been negative for many months. What happened is we had another bond rally, and it triggered a big stock rotation. And, just in the last 6 days, the Russell 2000's up over 1.5%, 1.54 actually. So that's a little bit too much too quickly. So things are starting to come back down. But, the home builders have probably been the hottest sector. Toll Brothers is our favorite there in that sector. But mortgage rates are the lowest since March. They're under 7% now. So everybody's anticipating this Fed rate cut. We have this PCE inflation report later this month. We know a lot of the components in it. They've softened, like owner's equivalent rent and So we're hoping it's going to be flat to negative, okay, and really shock the Fed into having an incredibly dovish FOMC statement on July 31st, and obviously we'll get a rate cut on September 18th. Now, if I was running the Fed, I'd cut rates on July 31st, but right now it's all going to be based on the PCE. And until the Fed starts cutting rates, everybody wants weak economic news. We had flat retail sales. I know if you back out oils and gas, it was a lot better, but that was a good headline that might convince the Fed to cut. We've had negative ISM manufacturing and service sector. Anytime those indices fall below 50, usually a recession ensues. So they better hurry up and cut rates.
Do you think there's a possibility that we will have a mild recession in the next 12 months?
No, it's just 2 quarters. I don't think we'll have 2 quarters. I think our energy exports alone will keep us growing. And then, of course, Trump wants to drill, and change all that. The other thing is, remember, Biden changed what a recession is. Okay. They did technically have a recession when he got in, but then Wikipedia changed the definition.
We did have 2 consecutive quarters of mildly negative GDP, but they never actually, I mean, that's the technical definition of a recession, but it never got called, which was odd.
Yeah, but yet Janet Yellen changed it. I think she blamed it on inventories. So,
but Louis, are you suggesting that somebody in the government would move the goalpost on an economic release? Are you suggesting they might manipulate the numbers?
Yes. Janet Yellen is famous for her transitory comments that the inflation was transitory. Obviously,
that may go down in history as one of the quotes that aged the poorest.
Yes. Well, she was famous for a lot of quotes. A lot of them don't get out there. The Babylon Bee took her transitory comment, and they have the Babylon Bee is a spoof site, but
it is. It's pure gold. It's like the Onion. It's just, if you need a good laugh, just spend a half hour on those sites. You will just it won't change anything, but you'll feel better. Yeah.
But the Yellen spoof on Babylon Bee is that Biden's dementia is is transitory. It's just, it is what it is, But, the elections are good for the markets because people have hope. Obviously, we want to get all this over with and move on and grow and prosper. And there's a lot of optimism in America. And, if I was advising Biden or Gavin Newsom or whoever is going to be the Democratic nominee, I would tell them they might want to have a positive message. But, as I speak to you today, his message is neutering the Supreme Court, and I've never seen one branch of the government fight with the other branch so publicly.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that lately, but no, you're right. A more positive message tends to be what sells. Americans tend to be an optimistic lot, and pump us full of good news, man. Even if you're lying to us, just lie to us with good news, right?
That's correct. That's why you have to smile, be exciting, and so Trump was very well liked until he got into politics. So it's going to be very interesting. I think they're very worried. I think they're more worried now about the House and the Senate, because if you have a low turnout on the Democratic side, it would hurt.
That's what, in particular, the House. What I noticed was interesting in the betting markets. The betting markets for a while have been pricing in Republican control of the Senate because the election is more favorable to, like, the way the math is working out. It's far more favorable for them in the Senate. The presidency was going back and forth, kind of leaning Biden for a while. Post debate, it was leaning Trump, but that was sort of coin flip. The House, though, was leaning Democrat and has for most of the last 6 months or so. After the attempted assassination, it flipped pretty hard. Like the betting markets swung really hard the other direction. They're now pricing in a sweep. So that'll be interesting. I may be the odd duck. I actually kind of prefer gridlock because I figure if no one's going to screw anything up too badly. If it's gridlocked, it's just they're going to butt heads. We're likely to not get gridlock. If the election were held today, it would be a clean sweep. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, Yeah, of course, as soon as you're elected president, you only have 90, 120 days before everybody attacks you,
Sure.
and it's a king of the hill game, and then you're a lame duck. So maybe Trump would have more staying power with JD Vance, but it's, people like to complain, and we'll see how it all goes. And
We will indeed.
but right now people have hope. Okay, and let's just hope we can keep all the candidates safe. And Trump, he's even reaching out to RFK, and RFK finally got a Secret Service protection, and so he's trying to reach out. So we'll see what happens.
We shall indeed. And of course, it's our job to move with the times, follow the money, and trade along the way.
Yeah. That's right. Speaking of trading, I guess, do you want some stocks? Or?
I will gladly take any recommendations that you have to share.
Yeah, I think at this moment, as I talk to you, that probably your best buys near term are Lilly and Novo Nordisk. Those are clearly the weight loss drugs. Okay.
Sure. And by the way, I will add that no matter who wins the election, America still has an obesity problem, and that's not going away.
That says the world. It's it's our processed foods. It's our sedentary lifestyle, and my doctors always threaten to put me on those drugs, and it's just a matter of time before they do that. But we keep the studies are only 7 years, so you gotta read what happens after 7 years. So, all I know is if you have a pancreas issue, you should never take the drugs. But so far, it's unbelievably popular now. It's in a pill format.
Anything that makes people skinny is going to be popular.
That's right.
Well, very good. Louis, thanks for your time. As always, full of good trading insights here. I'd love to have you on again soon.
And one last thing, Charles, I should add that, the earnings for the S&P are coming in good, better than expected, but it's early. The analysts were expecting 8.8% increase for the S&P earnings gain, strongest over 2 years. They've now raised that to 9.3. So one of the reasons the market heated up with these positive analyst comments under the surface. So a lot of optimism right now.
Indeed. All right. Let's hope the market keeps it up. And on that note,
thank you, Charles.
Louis, thanks for being on the show today. I'd love to have you on again soon. And for everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. And that's going to wrap up today's issue here. To life, to liberty, and the pursuit of wealth, this is Charles Sizemore signing off.